Hello, welcome back. In this Blender tutorial, we will be creating the candle and flame used in the meditate video you are seeing here. This video is available to watch and meditate for 3 hours on YouTube. The link to the video is in the description, as well as the link to where you can purchase this completed tutorial file from our site braun.com. We will first create the candle and create a nice waxy material. Then dive into some sculpting in Blender to make the candle look used. Then we'll create the wick and the flame using some deformers and some animation techniques to cycle the flame motion and light. Let's get started. We'll start with a new project. First, let's delete the default cube from the scene. I'll type Shift-A to bring up the Add menu, and pick Mesh, and then Cylinder to create the initial candle shape. I'll use the default settings. Rename the cylinder in the outliner by double-clicking it, then let's call it Candle. Press N to open up the side panel, and make sure you have items selected. Check out the dimensions of our default cylinder. Assuming your units are set to meters. This says our candle is 2 meters tall by 2 meters wide. That's a really big candle. I'm going to click drag down on all 3 dimensions, and put in 0.06 meters, which is a little under 2.5 inches. The physical size of the candle I'd like to create at this time. If you enjoy this video, please tap the like button and subscribe to our channel to get notified when new videos are posted. Alright, candles aren't perfect, so we'll need to do some work on this cylinder. First, let's add some more geometry to it so we can sculpt it within Blender. With the cylinder selected, press Tab to toggle into Edit mode. Press 2 on your keyboard to select the Edge Select mode. Click on one of the edges on the top like so. Then, while holding Shift and the Alt key, click on the edge next to it to select the entire ring. And then Shift Alt again, and select the bottom edge as shown to select the entire ring at the bottom. Then over in the Tools panel, select the Bevel tool. I'll just click on the lollipop, drag out, and give the candle a small bevel on the top and bottom. Then, while still in this mode, open the little bevel panel in the lower left, and I'll change the number of segments to 5. Okay, let's close this panel. Next, I'll go back to the Select Box tool to clear the current tool and click off to the side. Hover the cursor near the candle and press Ctrl R, and then move the mouse around until we see an edge loop created in the middle of the candle. Click the left mouse button to place it right in the center. While still in this mode, open the Edge Loop pop-up window if it's not already up, and let's increase the edge loops to 5. And then move them up just a bit on the mesh using the factor slider within the window. Great! Go back to the Select Box tool, and then let's orbit a bit to see our top a little better. I'm clicking 3 to go into Face Select mode. Select the top face of the candle like so. I'll zoom out just a bit, and then while hovering near the top, press the I key to bring up the Insert Faces tool. Select the little circle and drag inwards as far as you can go. That should be good. With the top face still selected, once again type Ctrl R and move your mouse to position the edge loop in the middle like so. And then we can go back into the edge loop pop-up and change this to 4. Okay. We aren't done yet. This does give our candle a lot more detail to work with. However, because we will be using the sculpting tool next, we want to make sure it has even more faces to work with. Click the Select Box tool, press 3 for Face Select, then left-click on any face on the candle, then type the A key to select all the faces. Right-click on the candle, and select Subdivide. Press the Tab key to toggle back to Object mode, and let's do some sculpting. With the candle selected in Object mode, right-click on the candle, and select Shade Auto Smooth. Along the top of your interface, click the Sculpting tab. This will bring us into the Sculpting editor. Sculpting is probably best done in the Solid View or Materials Preview view. Let's make sure we are in Solid View. Let's navigate to get a good view of the top and sides. As you hover over the candle, we get a little solid circle with another dotted circle inside. This is our brush profile. The inner circle is the strength represented by this slider at the top. And the outer circle is the radius of our brush, or how wide our brush is. I'm going to adjust the radius a bit to, let's say, around 89 or so. Then at first I'm going to lower the strength just a bit and see what happens. Along the bottom is our brush palette. Hovering over the icons gives us the name and a hint at what they do. Let's select Draw. Before we sculpt, notice at the top of your screen next to the strength slider is a plus and a minus. With the Draw tool selected, having the plus highlighted will add to our mesh or push out if you will. Clicking on the minus sign will make the draw brush push in. I want to push down the top a bit, as if the candle has melted some over time. I'll select the minus and then position by mouse over the top of the candle and click and drag around and see what I get. If I don't like something, I can always Ctrl Z to undo. Try small or short brush strokes and then let go. If you like what you did, you can continue to the next small short brush stroke and so on, slowing building up the effect. So if you do have to undo, you only undo your last short stroke. If you find the strength is too weak or too strong, you can adjust the strength a bit and see what happens. I like where I'm at. I can orbit the camera around to another angle and repeat the brush strokes. Okay, I think that's good for the top. I'm going to find a nice angle here with the top inside. With a small radius brush, make sure the minus icon is highlighted for pushing in, and let's sculpt some little dents, if you will, around the edge. Like so. If you find you are getting sharp edges, or need to smooth the area a bit, you can go down here and select the Smooth tool, then with a low strength setting, make sure the plus sign is pressed for smoothing, and slowly go over the top of the area to smooth it out a bit. Tumble around your view a bit, and do this around the entire candle using the Draw and Smooth tools. Alright, that looks decent. Let's jump back into the Layout tab. Make sure our candle is selected. In the Properties editor, click on the Materials icon. And let's create a new material for our candle by clicking on New Material here. And I'll double-click the name and rename it Candle. For now, that's all I'm going to do in the Properties menu. The rest of the material editing will be done in the Shading editor. Click on the Shading tab at the top to open the Shading editor. Depending on your setup, your screen should look something like mine. Let's ignore the two panels on the left for now. Then click drag up the Shading editor window, so we have some room to see what's going on. I like to develop my materials while inside of the rendered viewport window, as it gives me a much better representation of what my eventual material will look like when rendered. So if it isn't already, I'll select the view mode in the upper right-hand corner. The scene is using the default light that was created when we created the new scene. If you feel this is not enough light, you can add more, or just move it closer to the candle. Let's adjust some basic settings in the Principled BSDF node to give our candle some life. First, I'll give the candle a nice light yellow wax look in the base color like so. For roughness, I'll lower this just a bit to maybe a 0.4. I'd like it to be a little shiny like wax, but not too shiny like plastic. Open up the subsurface drop-down. And let's bring this weight up to 0.8. I'll leave everything else as default. In order to see the effects of the subsurface settings, we will need a flame light to sit on top of the candle and send its rays into the wax and bounce around a bit. We'll do this later in the video after we finish the flame. Now it's time to move on to the wick. Let's go back to the layout view. If you haven't been doing so, be sure to increment save often, so you can always go back a couple steps if you need to. I'm going to create another cylinder for the wick. So Shift A to open the Add menu, then Mesh, and then Cylinder. First, let's change the size. It has to be really small to be a wick compared to its default size. So let's press in to open the side panel if it's not already open, and make sure the Item tab is clicked. Under Scale, go ahead and click drag on all three inputs, and then type in 0.001. I'll move the wick up a bit above the candle so we can see it. Scale the wick up in Z a little, it looks more like a wick. Next, let's add some additional edge loops. With the wick selected, press Tab to toggle into Edit mode. Press Ctrl R, and move the mouse until you see the center edge loop appear. Left-click to place. Then while still in this mode, let's open the Edge Loop dialog box, if not already open, and change the number of cuts to 3. That should be enough. We just want to give the wick a little bend at the top. Click on Select Box to clear the tool. Click off to the side to deselect the edge loops. Then let's press 2 key for edge select. I'll press Shift and Alt, and click on the edge to select the loop. Press G, and move this over just a bit to the right. Then let's do the same select on the second to top row, Shift, Alt left click to select the loop, and this time, let's move this over to the left a bit, like so. Okay. That will work. Tab to toggle back into Object View. With the wick selected, click on the Materials icon in the Properties editor, and create a new material. Double-click and name it Wick. Change its color to black, and roughness to 1. Zoom in a bit, so you can see the top of the wick. Tab to go into Edit mode once again. Press 3 for Face Select. Then click on the top face of the wick to select it. Back over in the Properties menu. With the Materials icon still selected, let's add a new material slot by clicking the plus sign here, and then clicking New Material to add a new material into slot 2. With the top face of the wick still selected, press Assign. Double-click the name of the new material and rename it Wicktop. For the color, make it orange. Tab again to go back to Object mode. Click on the Rendered View icon so we can see what we've created. Let's place the wick at the center of the candle top and push it down a bit into the top. In the outliner, double-click on the cylinder that we are using for the wick and let's rename it Wick. Alright. It's time to create the flame. While there are many ways to make a flame in Blender, including using 2D cards, I prefer a 3D flame as I feel it better reflects a real-life flame in the way it moves and has depth to it. Let's zoom out a little. Press Shift A to bring up the Add menu, then Mesh, and I'm going to select the UV sphere. When that comes in, it's going to be huge. Press the N key to bring out the panel, and select Item tab. At the bottom under Dimensions, let's click Drag to select all of them, and type in 0.005 and hit Enter. Hit G key to move the UV sphere up and position it about midway up the wick, or something like this. I'll put us into X-ray mode for a moment, so I can see the wick through the sphere. We want the flame to overlap the wick by a bit like in real life. Okay, for this next step, we can go into the solid shade view, so it's not redrawing all the time. With the sphere selected, press Tab to toggle into Edit mode. I'll zoom in a bit, to get a close look at the top of the sphere. Press 1 for Vertex Select, and let's select the vertex at the very top of the sphere. Once selected, go up to the Proportional Editing tool and click it to activate. Open the drop-down next to that icon, and set the proportion size number to 0.005. Then press G for Move, and let's move the single vertex up, like so, into the shape of a flame. 0.005 works for me, but if you see the bottom of the sphere rise up as you move the vertex, undo, then reduce the proportion size field and try again until you get a mesh that looks like this one here. Okay, let's tab out of Edit mode. You can go ahead and right-click on the flame and select Shade Auto Smooth. Great. In the outliner, find the sphere mesh, and double-click it to rename it. Let's call it Flame. Alright. Let's give our flame a material. With the flame selected, click on the Material Properties icon in the Properties editor. Let's click New. Double-click the newly created material, and rename it Flame. Let's go into the Shading view. Change the view to Material Preview in the upper right corner, so we get a little better lighting on the flame while we create the material. With the flame selected, if no nodes appear in the bottom editor, press the Home key. That should center them into the view for you. For the base color, leave it white for now. I'm going to leave the roughness alone. Open up the Emission drop-down in the Materials node. For now, leave these settings at default. We'll come back to these in a moment. Let's add in a transparency texture, which will make it look more realistic. While in the shader editor, press Shift A, then search for a gradient texture. Place that over to the side here. Shift A again, this time I want a color ramp. Connect the FAC out of the gradient into the FAC input on the color ramp, like so. Then for now, connect the color output of the color ramp into the base color of our material. Change the linear drop-down and select Ease. Let's move these color sliders around a bit. Let's put black here. And then on the other side over here. Then I'll hit the plus sign and add a new one between the two and make it a nice dark gray like so. Okay, at the moment our flame, formerly a UV sphere, should look something like this. The idea is that we are creating an alpha map. Black will be transparent at the bottom, gray a little less, and then white will be more opaque at the top. But we have an issue. The gradient is going up and down instead of side to side. We can fix this inside the shading editor. Press Shift and A, and we are looking for a mapping node. Let's place this here. Next Shift A, and look for texture coordinate. Let's place this here. Connect the texture coordinate UV out to the vector input on the mapping node. Next, connect the vector output of the mapping node into the vector input of the gradient. Okay. Something changed, but it didn't solve our issue. Yet. In the mapping node, under rotation, set both the X and Y degrees to 90. Now that is what we want. Black on the bottom and white on top. You can adjust the color ramp at any time to adjust this gradient. Alright. Now that we know what the alpha map looks like, let's disconnect it from the color. For now, let's leave it as is, and don't connect to the alpha yet. Let's add another color ramp into the editor. Shift A. Color ramp. I'll place this under the other one here. Connect the FAC output of the gradient into the FAC input of the new color ramp. This makes sure we are orienting those UVs around correctly. Next, connect the color out of the color ramp into the base color input for now. We can now make this look more like a flame. On this color, leave this one black. But let's slide it over to about here. Make this one a bright yellow. And slide over to around here. And let's add a new one. Make it a deep warm orange. Now we can see the gradient in effect. Drag the color output of the bottom color ramp into the color input on the emission section of the material. Drag the color output of the top color ramp into the alpha channel. You should now have something that looks like this. Yellow on top, and slowly ramps to transparent. In the emissions drop down on the material, set the strength of the emission to 100. And you should now have a hot looking flame. Play around with the strength and the ramps to get a flame that you are happy with. I think it is too transparent at the bottom. So I'm going to slide the black and gray to the left a bit. That looks better to me. One last tweak to the material before we move on to animating the flame. When looking at reference, a flame is a gas, and doesn't have a hard edge like a mesh does. I found that if you go into the sheen drop down on your material, and bring this weight up to around 4 or 5, it gives it a nice edge effect. Alright, let's tackle the animation of the flame effect. First, let's go back to Layout View. Make sure your view mode is on Solid Shading View, so we can see the animation cleanly. Select your flame, and click on the Move tool on the side to bring up the Move gizmo. It should still be at its default location, from when you first created the UV sphere. If not, you will want to move it to this position. You can do this quickly by bringing out the side panel with the letter N. Then going to Tool. Then under Options and Transform, click the check box next to Origins. Now you can move the mesh origin or pivot point around. I'll undo this as I am happy with where mine is at. Uncheck the Origins box before moving on. I'll press N, again, to close this panel. With the flame still selected, and the Move tool active, move your view to match this one with the red X-axis facing towards you. You can also click on the X in the gizmo in the upper right corner, and that will take you to a straight-on view of the flame from the X-axis. Once at this view, and the flame selected, click on the modifiers icon in the Properties editor. Click Add Modifier, then Deform. Then Simple Deform. At first your flame will look squished. That's because it defaults to twist. We want bend. When you click on bend, you see your flame bend to the right. Note that the axis is set to X, the same direction we are facing. It is using the default 45-degree angle in the field here. If we drag this back and forth, we see the flame bending back and forth. This is the field we are going to animate. Over on the left side of your interface, bring the timeline editor window up like this. Then select the upper left drop-down to change the editor type. We want to change this to Graph Editor. It doesn't matter what frame the playback slider is on. Back over in the modifiers section, set this angle to 0 like so. Next, right-click on the field and select Insert Keyframe. The field turns yellow, and a keyframe is added to the Graph Editor. All the way to the left in the Graph Editor, open the drop-down for Flame Action, and you will get the angle field that we just set a keyframe for. Press the N key while in the Graph Editor. This will bring up a side panel like this. Click on the Modifiers tab if not already selected. Then click on the Add Modifier drop-down and select Noise. Your Graph Editor will suddenly be filled with crazy lines like this. You can zoom out using the middle mouse scroll to see that it has added noise to this animation. Drag the playback slider back and forth and see what it does to your flame. Now press the spacebar and watch it playback. And spacebar again to stop. That's not bad out of the gate, but I think it's a bit fast for a candle flame. Unless it's really windy. In the modifiers, noise dialog box, there are two settings we can adjust. The scale is how often the noise changes. A higher scale, the slower the movement. I'm going to set this to 4.5 and play back. The strength slider controls how much the noise goes in either direction, depending on how breezy you want it to be. I'm going to set mine at 0.45 and play back. Okay, I like that. I'm going to drop this lower editor down just a bit. Okay, so we have this effect here. I like the way it looks from this angle. But what if we orbit over here to the side? And play. Suddenly the flame doesn't move anymore. Well, it's moving, but it's moving in the x-axis, so from the side it doesn't seem to be moving at all. This wouldn't be a problem if you always viewed the flame from the x-axis. But what if you wanted to move your camera around, for instance in an animation? Well, let's try that. Click on the little camera icon on the side here. That gives us the camera POV, what the camera will render. Click on the lock under the camera icon to lock the view to the camera, and let's move around to the side using our usual navigation. And play. As expected, same results. But what if we could constrain the flame to always point at the camera on its x-axis? We can. Uncheck the lock icon and the camera icon to get us back to the viewport. I'll zoom out a bit so we see the flame and our camera. Make sure our flame is selected. In the Properties editor, find the Constraint Properties icon and click on it. Then click on Add Object Constraint. In the list, under Tracking, select Lock Track. Under Target, use the eyedropper to select what we want the flame to track to. In this case, the camera. Select the eyedropper and pick the camera. I want to track the x-axis, as that is where our animation is viewed from. And I want to lock on Z so the flame doesn't move from the Z-axis. Meaning even when the camera is moving up or down, the flame won't tilt up or down. Let's give this a try. Camera icon. Then lock the camera. Press play. And let's move around as we play the animation. Bingo. Exactly what we want. Now from any view the candle will appear to flicker. Okay. Let's get out of the camera POV. Unlock and click the camera icon. While in layout, let's go back to the rendered view. The emission from the flame is giving off some light. But I want to amp up this effect quite a bit so we visually see a flicker in the brightness, and this will show through the subsurface of the candle to create a really cool effect. Let's add a point light to the scene. Shift A. Go down to Light and Point. This adds a point light at the origin. Let's move this up to where the flame is. That is one bright flame. With the new point light still selected, click on the light bulb icon in the Properties editor. Under Power, type in 0.02. If you have moved your candle since creating it, position the point light just above the tip of the wick of your candle. I only want this light to illuminate the candle. I don't need it to shine on the wick or anything else for that matter. It's just a light to create a dramatic effect. We can do that with light linking. With the light selected, click on the orange object properties in Properties Editor. Scroll down, open the shading section, and then light linking. Click New. A new window appears. With the point light still selected and active in the Properties Editor, in the outliner, left-click drag the candle into the new light linking window. The candle object appears in the light linking window, with a checkbox next to it. What this means is now that point light is only shining on the candle and nothing else. If I uncheck the box, that would then tell the light to not shine on the candle and only on everything else in the scene. I want it on. I'll do a quick render to see how we're doing. I'm going to go over to the Properties Editor and click on the Render Properties icon. Under Render Engine, I'll drop this down and select Cycles. I'll leave the render settings I have here with a max samples of 2048. Then click on the Output Properties icon. Since this is just a test, I'm going to change my render size to 512 by 512. Click on the camera icon in the main window, and then click the lock. Navigate to a decent angle. And then I'll select the Render menu and Render Image, or press F12. I'm happy with the look of the light illuminating the top of the candle, and the nice waxy look I'm getting from the side. One last thing to do, and that is to add a flicker to the light, so it appears like the light is coming from the moving flame. Select the light. Click on the green light bulb icon in the Properties Editor. Right-click on the power field and select Insert Keyframe. Looking familiar? In the Graph Editor, we see Power now has a keyframe assigned to it. With it highlighted, bring out the side panel if not already open using the N key. Then go to Modifiers tab and select Add Modifier, and like before, click Noise. I'll zoom to see a bit better. It will be hard to tell what settings we need until we render out an animation. As I have already done this, I have some numbers that I can put in here with relative certainty. For the scale, put in 7 or 8. This spreads the effect out a bit. For strength, I'm putting in 0.05. I want a subtle flicker coming from within the candle. I'll render out a quick animation and see what we have. I'll drop down some of the settings in the render properties, so it doesn't take too long. I can always up these later for the final. And for output, I'll just make this 512 by 512 pixels. I'll render about 4 seconds to see how it looks, so I'll go from frame 1 to 100. Select my camera, lock it to the viewport, and then frame up my scene. That looks good. Then set off my render. And while that is going, I'll fast forward to the final. And here we are. I assembled this in After Effects and added a subtle glow to the scene as well, which I think adds some character. Blender has its own compositor which I could have done this in, but it is a pre-render process, meaning it happens before the final image is spit out. If I didn't like the look I got, I would have to re-render the entire sequence again. Having control in After Effects gives me the ability to make immediate edits to any effect I add. Okay. That does it for this tutorial. If you would like to purchase this exact project, you can do so at our online store. Links to the store and to the final 3-hour looping meditation video based on this candle and flame technique are in the description below. I hope you got something out of this video. If so, please like and subscribe. Also, please leave a note in the comments with any questions or things I could have done differently. Check out other videos on my YouTube channel. Best wishes to you. Now go create.